Welcome everybody to the second class in our Community Resilience Leadership series. I want to thank all of our partners who are helping to put the series on. The anchor partner is the Silicon Valley Interreligious Council. I'm a board member and I'm the catalyst for the class with the civic support. I want to thank Civic as a partner and sponsor, and the Loma Prieta Community Foundation and HCARE for providing the financial support for the program, and all the partners who are putting in a lot of time and effort to bring this series to the leaders in the San Francisco South Bay area. This is a pilot program. This is an experiment where we're just hosting the class and build the field, and they will come. So we'll learn together. We know there's a lot of leaders in the room already who are running resilience leadership programs, and we're trying to help them connect, help neighborhood leaders connect, people who are organizing sites. We'll talk a little bit more about what those mean. So let's just go on the journey and learn about what's going on in resilience work in the South Bay together. Now, for the folks who weren't here last time, I'm going to do a really quick run through about the program overall before we look at tonight's agenda, just to make sure everybody's oriented and comfortable. So this is the second session. The third and fourth sessions will be in May, the 3rd and the 31st. First, focusing on community mutual support on May 3rd, several topics there, and then sustainability and climate readiness on May 31st. And these resilience themes really apply anywhere, but the stories that we're going to share are from the San Francisco South Bay leaders, and that covers the peninsula, Silicon Valley, Monterey Bay. We have fuzzy boundaries. It's really the people connections that are important. We're going to start tonight's session honoring the Indigenous stewards of Northern California. The nativelands.ca website is a great resource if you're not familiar with that, to know the history of this land. And we thank the stewards of the past and the stewards of today who help make this land a wonderful place for people to live and for all the species in the land to thrive for future generations to come. And may this class help that be so. Thank you for spending your precious time here and for all the work that you do. Quick context about community resilience. I like this definition from the Institute for Sustainable Communities, that is the ability of people, organizations, and systems to manage disruption and to bounce forward to build stronger, even more prosperous communities. And I say resilience is a one-word label for all the different things that different words that people use to describe the kind of communities that they want to live in. It might be sustainable, peaceful, wise, just, healthy, secure. And resilient regions are the tipping point for building global resilience, because they're connected to the neighborhoods and communities where people know each other well, but they also have the scale to be able to influence the larger scale states and nations above. And we use this model of resilient places in the class. We talk about resilience neighbors and groups. So anybody can be a resilience leader in their neighborhood. They can, get their neighbors together to take a CERT class together, and all of a sudden they have a better CERT trained neighborhood, for example. Or you're a Rotary Club leader or a Lions Club leader or any kind of interest group leader, and you can do the same thing. You can organize programs within your interest group. And you might be a leader in a site where you have a facility that is possibly organized for some other reason, like a place of worship or a school. And you might decide that you want to run resilience programs at your site. Maybe you're already running them and you're considering running more. And then you can reach the point where you are a full service resilience hub. The Urban Sustainability Directors Network has a model called Resilience Hubs. and they are, full service, running many different kinds of programs. There's a 64-page PDF that describes what a resilience hub is. And I will share these slides afterwards so that you can click on them and go take a look at that. This link points to that website, and you can take a look at it for yourself. California is calling resilience hubs community resilience centers, and there's a lot of community organizing at the state level by the Strategic Growth Council for supporting community resilience centers. And we actually have programs in the South Bay to do that are beginning now. So in this class, we're going to be thinking about neighborhood level programs, site level programs, and then growing into some groups may want to grow into resilience hubs. And a hub doesn't have to just be one organization. It can be a network or collaboration of multiple sites. That's pretty common. Here's an example of some of the kinds of programs just to help you get oriented to the things that happen at these different scales of places. And here we are tonight at the Disaster Readiness and Recovery class. I want to thank the disaster expert speakers that you'll be listening to tonight for joining us. You'll be meeting them later. And also shout out to Robin Porter, who helped organize the class but wasn't able to be here for family situation reasons. So the goals for tonight are to learn more about disaster systems in the South Bay that people can get involved in as opposed to professionals. Get to know each other better in breakout groups, learn more about programs that are on the ground. And we are doing a resilience challenge during the class that people are taking a survey after each class where you decide what you want to do to take steps to build resilience yourself. So the agenda is going to be a mix of listening to stories and being in breakouts together. And we'll start with Marsha, who has a great presentation on introducing us to emergency management. And then we'll go into some breakouts, and then we'll hear from Lynn, Joyce, and Harry on their programs, and then we'll do some more breakouts, and then we'll close by 8 o'clock Pacific time. Okay. Want to welcome, oh my gosh, parts of this slide didn't load, tried reloading.
I put too many pictures in my slides.
Try reboot.
Well, we're just going to do that, and I'm going to double check because, yep, that's good.
Oh, yeah, we'll just be surprised if some of them didn't load.
Okay.
All right.
Oops, sorry.
It's okay.
There we go. And I just want to introduce Marsha as the executive director of CADRESV in Silicon Valley. And she will be explaining more what that is, but I'm thrilled to have met Marsha through this program and to hear more about what she has to say tonight. So take it away, Marsha.
Thank you, Leslie. Hi, everyone. It is wonderful to keep meeting new people that are excited about being ready for whatever's coming, whether it's heat or earthquakes or whatever. It's just inspiring. It keeps me motivated to keep on working. So I'm Marsha Hovey. I have been an emergency manager in Santa Clara County for a long time, 30 years. I was the emergency manager for the city of Cupertino for 10 years. I ran a community emergency response team program there. And in addition to my role of training the city staff and the community on how to be ready for disasters and writing plans. And after I retired, I was on the board of this nonprofit called CADRESV, Collaborating Agencies Disaster Relief Effort. And CADRESV is the It's the nonprofit arm of emergency management for the county. So I'm going to go through kind of the differences between government emergency management and nonprofit emergency management and how you can fit into one or either. So we're going to go over that landscape and how we support the response, how individuals can help, and then we're going to do a breakout to answer questions. So this is obviously a map of California showing the difference between the structure of emergency management in California. So on the right, you see government and Santa Clara County there in region 2. So the state is divided up into 6 regions, and those regions have state coordinators that help to work within that region. And when they do mutual aid, if they're asking for help from another community, it's usually those within their region, they ask first, and then they ask other regions. For nonprofit, faith-based, and private sector, we're divided north and south. And we're divided into these things called VOADs, which means voluntary organizations active in disaster. And I wish they hadn't named it that, because it implies that the people that are responding are all volunteers. But the reality is that there are many professional organizations in the nonprofit sector that respond to disasters and help the community, often at no charge to the community. And they'll come from other states to do that. So we're voluntarily responding to the disaster because we have no legal requirement that we have to do it, as opposed to government that must do it. So we're there because we like to help. Next slide. Oh, I knew they were going to start barking. It should stop in a minute. Hopefully. All right, so oh, hold on a second. I'm sorry.
Going with the flow here. Marsha is also on the road, I believe, so I appreciate
Well, that was fun. I just got here today. I'm dog sitting my grand dogs in Reno. And so they saw something out the window, and that's what you get. So we can edit that part out of the video for later. Okay, so government and the VOAD, we have kind of similar preparedness activities. We both promote alert and warning. We want everyone to sign up in Santa Clara County for Alert SCC. And every county has some kind of an alert and warning system that they're trying to get the community to sign up for. We both do public education. We both plan and prepare for disasters. We both do coordination. We both do training. We both do grants, except that the government is usually not applying for grants. They're giving out grants, as opposed to the VOAD that is looking for money all the time.
Ready for the next one?
Yep. Well, it's going to keep doing that to you, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so these categories here, and this isn't all the categories, but access and functional needs, immigrant support, emotional, spiritual care, mass care, shelter and housing, donations, legal support for individuals, food and feeding children, the unhoused, animals, healthcare, and seniors, farm workers, all of that. It's all part of disaster recovery. The impacts cross all of these different groups of people or groups of disciplines. Very little of this is the responsibility of government. And so what happens is that the responders, you know, something happens, something bad happens, the first responders go out and they're charged with making the problem go away. So they'll put out the fire, they get the bad guy. If it's an earthquake, they rescue people out of buildings. And then after that, there's an assessment that gets done to see what the damage is to the community. People damage as well as building damage and road damage. And so but the government is only responsible to take care of the damages to city facilities or county facilities. When it comes to private property, they can't do anything. And so that's where the VOAD comes in with the nonprofits that have expertise in all these different areas to come alongside the individuals that are now survivors of a disaster and help them achieve some new sense of normalcy. And this takes a long time. It takes on both government and the nonprofit side, disasters take a long time to get finished. On the government side, it takes years because, for example, a big earthquake, it takes years for government to get all of the rebuilding done or the repairs done. And on the human side, it can take years for individuals to be able to rebuild their houses if they were lucky enough to have insurance or prepared enough to have insurance to be able to rebuild their house. And you know, if they lost loved ones, there are just all kinds of issues that the nonprofits will come alongside to try to help get through the initial phases. When in San Jose in 2017, there was this little disaster called the Coyote Creek flood. I say it was little because it only impacted two small areas of San Jose, but it involved over 200 families that were flooded out of their homes, 280, I actually think. And the human recovery took almost 3 years. The final 3 families that needed to get rehoused and get themselves back to normal were done at the 3rd year. So it's a long process. Sometimes if from government, very often you can get burned out. If you worked a long disaster, and you may be seeing that now after COVID, because COVID took a lot out of government, took a lot out of some of the nonprofits, and people are retiring early or going to other jobs where they don't ever have to do this again because it's incredibly stressful, incredibly rewarding. Next slide. I found this picture on the internet. This is actually the Santa Clara County Emergency Operations Center. And this is when it's full of people. Obviously, most of the time it's just a lot of desks and computers and chairs. But the majority of counties in Santa Clara County have emergency operations centers that are well-funded that look like this. If you were in a city, depending on the size of the city, your emergency operations center might double as a community center or a community room or a training room. It might have a couple of tables in it and maybe some boxes of forms stuck in a corner, lots of different levels of preparedness. And coming from local government, and we were pretty prepared, but there are a lot of conflicting priorities for government. And unless your executive tells you that emergency preparedness is a priority, it doesn't get addressed the way that it should. And so when you see emergency operations centers that are just a couple of tables, and I'm not just speaking for Santa Clara County, because I've seen this all over the state, that city does not understand what they could have to go through. And they may need help from volunteers to make that happen. Next slide. Doo-doo-doo. So the stair steps that you see, the field, local government, operational area, which is what every county is called, an operational area. The operational area by government definition is the county and all of its political subdivisions. So it's the county government and city governments working together. And then above them is the regional emergency management, and above that is the state. The way that the structure, the communication structure works, you don't go above the next stair step. So if a field response, fire engines are working something and they need help, they will request that help from their city. If the city needs help, they will request the help from the county, which then can request it from other cities. If the county needs help in a big emergency, they can request from the region, which then goes out to other counties. And then if the county needs, or if the region needs more, then they go to the state. And then we have access to all resources, government resources of the state, and as well as FEMA. Now for the VOAD gets to float between all these levels. So a VOAD can work directly with a city in a disaster if it's one city involved. They can coordinate with multiple cities if they have the staff to do that. They can coordinate directly with the county operational area. And then because we have the NorCal VOAD, we work directly with the region, as well as having state representatives on the region calls. So we have what's called a voluntary agency liaison at the state level and at the federal level. So when NorCal VOAD coordinates with the VOADs, the state and FEMA are on those calls too. So we actually, I think, have a better communication structure in that we get the whole picture all at one time when we're all talking together. But you see that we work in parallel. That's okay. Keep going. We do work in parallel. And so how would you support emergency management for government? Well, there are some organized groups that work directly to support local government. One is the Community Emergency Response Team. You're going to hear about them later. There's medical reserve corps in some cities. Amateur radio emergency service, you can become a ham radio operator to assist when communication is down. That supports the Emergency Operations Center. And then you could become a Red Cross volunteer, and then because you're able to stand up a shelter, you could help a city stand up a shelter if the Red Cross is not available. Now, the cities are responsible for sheltering their population, even though most of the time they'll call the Red Cross first and say, can you help? And if the Red Cross says, yes, we can open a shelter for you, then they don't have to. That was their responsibility to make sure that people got sheltered. But in most counties, and I'll speak for Santa Clara County because I know this one and we'd have to check on the others. In Santa Clara County, they can only have enough volunteers locally to staff 2 shelters in Santa Clara County at the same time. And then they have to request people from other counties or other states, which just happened in our county because the Red Cross in our county was coordinating all of the shelters in Northern California. So CADRESV office is in the Red Cross building in San Jose, and there were people there from Louisiana and Kentucky, and there were accents flying all over the place. It was fun to be in there. But they came to help a bunch of people that they don't know. And it's really good to watch. But there are not enough people that know how to stand up a shelter. So if you wanted to have that expertise, you could choose to not respond to the Red Cross's request to shelter, but you could respond to the city's request to open a shelter. Because in a big earthquake, the cities are going to have a shelter open for a few days until help can come from the outside to do that. So that's a huge skill that we don't have enough. All of these, if you take the CERT training, or you want to be in the Medical Reserve Corps or ham radio, those are all easily available ways to plug in and support local government. Now, getting into the Emergency Operations Center is a little bit more difficult. It's not going to happen during the disaster unless you know the secret codes to the nuclear weapon that is the threat, because they want to vet everyone that comes in there. You'd have to get a background check and get fingerprinted and develop a relationship, because not all government staff are thrilled with volunteers. And that's because some volunteers give a bad reputation to all volunteers. And so there are lots of really good, responsible volunteers in the world. And then there are some that use their position to try to gain personally. You know, they'll wear their vest and hard hat at an inappropriate time and pretend that they're representing the city. And those kind of negative interactions causes the government to be suspicious. So we have to develop relationships, and Cadre could help make those introductions and work that way. But you could certainly learn, if you know emergency management, you can certainly help them with the design of their emergency operations center. You can learn emergency management over the years and become very skilled and valuable to your local jurisdiction. If you have IT knowledge, or you might be able to help with a website or develop software that could help organize the disaster, that would be wonderful. If you have skills in public information, or even if you're willing to, staff a hotline, that would be something to do. And then again, shelter management for the city. Next slide. And that's about all you can do for local government that I can think of right now. But there are more ways you can plug into the nonprofit sector if you choose. So Cadre, this is Cadre. This is our website. So I told you we have one office. It's in the Red office on North Grove Street in San Jose. We operate almost 100% virtually now since COVID, and we kind of like it that way. It's a very small staff. We have no full-time employees, and we just get done what needs to get done. And part of it is volunteers, and part of it is paid staff. Next slide. So again, it's a voluntary organization active in disaster. Not all counties have one. We're lucky that our county recognizes the value of coordinating and using nonprofits and the faith community and private sector in disaster response. And so they designated us as the official of OAD. It didn't really come with any funding, but it gave us the ability to look for funding because we were identified by them. So what we do pretty much is bring order to the chaos of the nonprofit sector. When a disaster happens, many organizations go out and start helping the community immediately. If they normally have people come to their doors to receive food or to ask for assistance, those people are still coming to their doors, but now they're bringing their friends because everybody's been impacted by the emergency. And so we keep track of who's doing what so that we're not duplicating efforts and that we're not missing an area of the community that's not getting any services. And we do that through this national VOAD model of communication, coordination, cooperation, and collaboration. Next slide. So our goal is to inform and inspire people to be ready and resilient. And so pre-disaster, we do lots of training webinars on our website. All of since COVID, all of our webinars are recorded, so you can go learn about anything you want. We have a library of preparedness information on a variety of different topics. We connect people almost every day. We learn about a new group and say, hey, you should talk to this person. It would be good for you guys to be working together. We do planning. We get really creative on how to solve problems, and we do community outreach to try to get people, individuals, to be more prepared. Next slide. Oh, I was supposed to mention on that slide, that's okay, you can stay here, but I was supposed to mention that we're, one of the things that we're doing in this preparedness phase right now, we look for ways that people aren't being treated equitably in disasters. And so one that we're working on right now is language equity. We believe that emergency preparedness information should be available in all languages, not just English and Spanish and Vietnamese and a couple of others that they call threshold languages in our county, and every county is different. So if your county has more than that, you should be grateful, because it's hard, but what our big focus right now is that our emergency alerts only go out in English. And we have more than half our population, English is not their primary language, and so we need to fix that. And then the other thing that I'm just supposed to mention is that we have a thing called the disaster in a box. So if you have a neighborhood and you're trying to organize them, I have a resource that we used to do it in Cupertino all the time. We would pick a neighborhood and say, do you want to do a drill? And they said yes. And then we pull out the disaster in a box, and with no preparation, they run through the drill, and suddenly everybody in the neighborhood thinks that we could do it better. And that's exactly what the goal is. Okay, during a disaster, our website has this other section for response and relief. We have a 24/7 person that answers the phone. Within 3 days of the disaster, we convene all of the organizations that we know of that are in the nonprofit or non-governmental sector, and we reach out to them and say, we're going to do a check-in. We find out who's doing what. We have government representatives on that call so that they can hear what nonprofits are doing, and we can hear what government is doing, and then we collaborate. We'll continue to connect organizations doing similar functions. And then as the disaster progresses, we hear about resources that are available. We build out our website based on the resources that are available. And we just continue to connect the organizations. And then if something isn't going right, and during COVID, the big thing was there were no personal protective equipment, masks in particular, available for the frontline workers that were helping the community, serving food or doing childcare. And so we stayed very visible to the cities and the county, telling them that we needed masks too. It wasn't just the hospitals. And we did eventually end up, and as often happens when you have to just adapt and improvise, the Council of Nonprofits, which is another nonprofit in our county, reached out to some big corporations that were shut down. And oh gee, they have stockpiles of N95 masks that were sitting in their warehouses because there was no one working. So we got those and got them distributed. Okay, and so you can go on from this slide, but we'll just continue to advocate anything that needs to be, that's needed. And we do that in addition before disaster. So if we know that there are issues, then we'll go after them. We don't go after them, we talk to them. I was just looking at Ken's question. Ken and I used to work together, being vetted or checked at some level of liability protection for people needing help. They're all, that's a great answer than I have to give you at this moment. But yes, they're trusted sources in the community, and I can talk to you some more about that maybe in the breakout. So as community members, you may in your day-to-day life, you may do things that could be used in a disaster, but maybe you didn't know how to plug in to help during a disaster. Maybe you just want to volunteer to help serve food because that becomes a big issue. So you or a service club could volunteer to help with food, or maybe you have a kitchen that could prepare food that's a certified kitchen, or maybe you have a van or a truck or a bus or a forklift, or big tents for events that you put on, or a giant warehouse space where donations could be put if we needed donations. And we don't want donations, we really want cash, but I'm talking about supplies being brought in a coordinated manner, like cases and cases of water or diapers that have been organized. So you may not think you have a disaster role, but maybe you do, and Cadre can help you explore that and see how you might want to fit in. Next slide. That resource directory that we're building, there's no obligation to be in the resource directory. It's just, we want to know that you're there so that we can give you an option to provide assistance or not. And another one that's hugely needed is translation and interpretation. So just think about that. And then, if you do meal prep or on a day-to-day basis, your organization runs a clothes closet, or you do childcare at a church on Sunday mornings, but all those volunteers have been vetted to do childcare, so they might be needed so the responders can keep working. Or if you normally give rides to people, so that way you've already been screened, and we know that if we're putting people in your cars that you already have all of that background work done. You can just create a communication network just to push information out, which is, number one is you need good information to make good decisions. And so if you're organizing your neighborhood or your school or your church, and you just have an email list that you can push information out to, you're supporting a disaster response now. Or you could be supporting any kind of resilience activity as long as we do it in a coordinated way. Next slide. I'm almost done, enough time. So I'm just going to brag real quick. So we were talking about this language equity thing. We were able to develop an earth presentation and translate it into 17 languages. And we're still looking for individuals that can voice over the PowerPoints to create videos on our website. But it's a really good, simple video, just what to do if you're at home to stay safe. Next slide. And it's about 35 minutes long. In addition to that, we created, we did outreach events last year. We went out and did 89 outreach events. The thing that was the biggest hit, we gave out clear plastic stadium bags, because it's always better to be able to see what's in your emergency kit. So stadium bags with this Dollar Tree supply list. So all these supplies for pets and first aid and general earthquake can be purchased at the Dollar Tree. And people were very excited that they could build a kit easily. And they all knew where Dollar Tree was. This is, you can go on to the next slide. This is just a picture of that earthquake page. We have all of everything translated, and then we just got another 17 translations of a document, disaster rights of immigrants, because we do know that people are afraid to go to Earth, to go receive assistance. Special projects. So this is how we're funded. It's grants, corporate and individual donations, and it's service projects. Next slide. And so we're always looking, next slide. You can switch slides.
Okay.
Oh, if you don't receive any government funding, we receive because we apply for grants. So we get a grant from Santa Clara County to do a symposium and 8 trainings a year. And then we get another grant from the Urban Area Security Initiative that allows us to do some other basic classes for Monterey, San Benito, Santa Cruz, and Santa Clara County, because those other 3 don't have VOADs, and we're trying to help them develop VOADs. But yeah, we work on a shoestring. You think? Yeah, I think they would too. Oh, next slide. This is the last slide. Do we not have another slide? Oh. Okay, so the last slide is just how can we work together, and you're more than welcome to be a cadre partner. If you are a group of organizations like those hubs, we call those COADs, community organizations active in disaster. And so you've already created a network. We just want to plug into your network so you can coordinate and we know what you're doing. And if you're a neighborhood, same thing, we'll coordinate with you if you're a church or a school. So that's, we want to help you find your disaster role. And that's what the VOAD does.
Thank you, Marsha, for all that information and that invitation. It's certainly got me thinking about ways that I can play a disaster role that I hadn't thought of before. So, okay, deep breath. We're now going to do about 15-minute breakout session where we're going to organize in groups that we're going to invite people to join a group that's the type of group that they are most similar to. So if you are here as an individual who's in the neighborhood or in a group, you could join that kind of a breakout group. Or if you're a facility leader, or if you are involved in large scale hubs or centers, you could join that group. And Susan is going to take over in a second here and help people set up the groups. And we'll be asking each of us to share your thoughts about what you know about disaster preparedness in your, or disaster shelters or anything, what's available in your neighborhood. And how ready do you think your neighborhood or facility is for a disaster? And what's inspiring you to think about taking the next step and getting ready personally or connecting with your local VOAD? And we have a team agreement for discussions in these breakouts, just to treat each other with respect, confidentiality, and step up, step back means that if you tend to speak more, you might want to step back. If you tend to not speak as much, you might want to step up so that we have a chance to hear everybody's voice in the room. So I'm glad you enjoyed your breakouts, and now we're moving into the second half of our time together tonight, where we're going to listen to more stories of ways to organize in programs on the ground at the neighborhood level and at the community level. So we're thrilled to have 3 speakers with us today. I'll just introduce them one at a time. We'll start out with Lynn Sestak from Firewise. And I'll just ask everybody, if you're not speaking, to please mute yourselves so that we have a good connection.
All right. Am I ready to roll?
You're ready to roll. Take it away.
Okay. My name is Lynn Sestak. I'm a volunteer and a board member with the Fire Safe Council of Santa Cruz County. My role is to be a Firewise coordinator, and that means I help communities that are interested in the Firewise USA recognition process, which I'll explain in a minute. I've done this for both Santa Clara County and Santa Cruz County. So the slides that I'm going to show you are tailored for Santa Cruz, but it's Firewise is agnostic to county boundaries. So some of the stats you'll see are for Santa Cruz. So this is called Why Go Firewise. I'm going to explain what Firewise is. FireWise is a national program. It's hosted by the National Fire Protection Association. Across the country, there's approximately 1,900 FireWise USA recognized sites. In California, there's 638. And the whole goal of the program is to help keep homes and lives safe from wildfire and to help you prepare better. So in Santa Cruz County right now, we have 46 FireWise recognized communities. I think in Santa Clara County, there's about 9 to 12. Many of them are in the Lexington Hills area. And then there's one in Los Altos Hills and a couple more down near Morgan Hill. FireWise, as collaborating as a group, we've done some impressive things where personally, FireWise communities have invested, at least in Santa Cruz County, over $6.1 million of their own money and volunteered 78,000 hours. And this is just personal investment in helping making their own communities safe from wildfire. So what is this thing called FireWise USA? Well, it's a process. It's a 6-step voluntary process where community members collaborate together. There's no cost to go through this process. It's all voluntary participation. Not all of your community members have to be gung-ho the first year. You just need about 30% of your community to be kind of with it and to be participating. It means decreased risk for residents and your first responders because you're making your community safer, doing home hardening, defensible space, setting up emergency communication networks, evacuation routes, that sort of thing. And it's kind of the next step beyond individual home hardening. You could do a 4-star job on hardening your own home, but if your neighbors haven't done the same, you haven't really reduced your risk of your house burning down. One of the main tenets behind FireWise is neighbors working shoulder to shoulder. We collaborate together. We get out, we do work parties together. We talk to each other about wildfire risk and what we can do to make our community safer for first responders to come in and defend it. So why should you participate? Again, collaboration with community members, vegetation management. You learn about removing vegetation or thinning vegetation 10 feet on either side of the road, making sure your driveways are cleared well enough for a big vehicle to get an emergency vehicle to come in, 14 foot up, 14 foot wide. Work on emergency communications agreements with your neighbors. You're also building goodwill with the local fire professionals. And then you get access to professional help through fire safe councils and emergency response districts, chipping programs, that sort of thing. And there's potential grant funds available. And lastly, the biggest perk is that there's many home insurance agencies in California offer discounts to residents in FireWise recognized communities. So what are the 6 steps? So there's 6 steps listed here. You'll see them in the slides that I'll share with Leslie that'll be available later. You're going to form a steering committee. You're going to do a risk assessment. You're going to host an education event. You're going to do a 3-year plan. You're going to report some of the work that you've done in terms of hours or dollars your community has invested. And then you're going to go fill out that FireWise USA application on the FireWise portal. And there's some links in here on how to do that. So some examples of getting your community to work together, you could schedule like a brush clearing or chipping days. You can identify all the fire hydrants in your community and make sure this little picture that see that fire hydrant, you really can't see it. So you clear out around all your fire hydrants and make them visible, put blue reflective dots in the road so that first responders know where your water sources are. You can work on your driveway clearance. You can mark turnout locations for emergency vehicles. You could come up with an emergency communication plan. There's tons of ideas of things you could do, just working together with their neighbors to make it safer for wildfire and for evacuation. This is an example of my own road, Sunset Ridge Road, up near the Skyline area, where we do regular work parties throughout the year, where we use chippers and chainsaws and other things, and then have great lunches. And it's just a really good way to kind of collaborate with your neighbors and bond with them and make your road safer. And then finally, after you submitted that your application and the NFPA says, yes, you're recognized, you get a couple of these nifty signs like the one that I'm holding there. You put it out on the head of your roads. And that sign it's a universal sign that firefighters throughout the state and the country recognize. They know that your community has gone the extra yard to make it safer for them to come in and defend. So it's a neat way to signal to people, to especially the firefighters who might save your community, that yes, come here first because we've done a lot of extra work. And then finally, if you're interested in more information, you would assess your community interest. You'd identify some people for a steering committee, and then you'd contact me or other people from fire safe councils to learn how to proceed. And then in these slides, there's some pointers to different fire safe councils, which provide education about how to do the FireWise process. And that's it. So I hope I've come in under my allotted 10 minutes. Over to Joyce.
Okay.
You did great,
so-
Lynn. Thanks so much. Go ahead, take it away, Joyce.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. And my name is Joyce Smith, and I am in charge of CERT basic training. You've got this little thing there. There we go. For Santa Cruz County. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what CERT is. It stands for Community Emergency Response Teams. It started in the mid-'80s after the Mexico City earthquake. Los Angeles fire watched what happened down there. 10,000 people died in that earthquake. But local people, spontaneous volunteers, were trying to help and trying to save people. And they did. They saved over 700 lives. But because they were not trained and did not know how to keep themselves safe, over 100 of them died in the process of saving those 700 people. So LA Fire thought, this could happen here. We're going to have a big earthquake too. And if we train people to have some basic skills, then they can help keep themselves safe and help others when first responders are overwhelmed in disaster. So the plan of the class is to help prepare people and communities so that you're more prepared for disasters. When a disaster happens, first responders are not going to be there. It could be days before they can get to you. So CERT trained people can act as immediate responders for their own family, their neighborhoods, and so forth. And then once activated in Santa Cruz County, we do not self-activate. We assist professional responders. Fire can activate us, law can activate us, and OR3, our county emergency operations, can activate us. So CERT basic class has sort of different units, starting with the home preparedness, disaster preparedness, how CERT is organized in the same way that fire works, using the incident command structure. Several classes on medical operations, disaster psychology, which the truth is, that is the class we have used the most when we actually have responded. Fire safety and utilities. I've never had to put out a fire. I know how to use my fire extinguisher, but I've never had to do that. We do not respond to terrorism, but we learn about how to identify it and get that information to first responders. I have never searched a building. It's disaster psych is what we've used the most. And then in the class at the end, we have our wonderful, fun, practical test day. At the beginning, we talk about, let's see, is this thing be showing to you now? Okay. We're talking about disasters and what can happen to disasters. Santa Cruz Mountains, both sides, my side and your side. We are the Disneyland of disasters. If there's a disaster, we have faced it somewhere in here. Click back in there. Okay. We have earthquakes, we have the fires, we have floods, we have landslides, we even have tsunamis. And no matter where we live, we face these things. This map I grabbed this morning from Cal Office of Emergency Services. This is talking about some of the dangers we can face in the mountains. So the light yellow, dark, sort of middle orange and red is your fire danger. And obviously, as you move up to red, it's more fire danger. Across the summit, Lower Prieta folks, you're up in high danger. But look at Boulder Creek and look what burned in CZU. It was not listed as high fire danger. The purple is earthquakes. That green area, that lovely little sage color, that is areas that can have liquefaction. It's built on landfill. And if there's an earthquake, what happens there is what happened in San Francisco. The earth turns to slush and everything sinks. And the crosshatch is areas in danger from tsunamis. The second unit, we talk about how fire and CERT follows the same structure. It's not something that comes quickly, but with a lot of practice, everybody gets pretty good at it. Our disaster medicine units are for two basic things. When a disaster strikes, there will not be enough responders, professional first responders to deal with it. So we need to be able to help out and help our neighbors and our families. Those units are kind of the fun units because lots of hands-on. We do a lot of splinting, a lot of bandaging, head to toe assessments. We learn triage and how to help each other out. Disaster psychology. We talk about the fact that living conditions will be different. In a disaster, your normal routines would be uprooted. You need to be able to take care of yourself, your team, and other survivors the best you can. Then we go into fire and utility safety, simple search and rescue. And terrorism, we are under the auspices of FEMA, and so terrorism and active shooters are part of our instruction at this point. And sadly, active shooter is too important these days. It should not be this important in this country, but it is. On our final day, we have that last class on light search and rescue. We practice how we would move people if we have to, and then people get to open their packs. And Carlos was so proud of his pack. This was the last class we had, that he put everything out in front of him to admire it before he tried anything on. It was a little kind of fun. The practical exam at the end is you put what you've learned into practice. Everybody suits up. The two left-hand pictures are search and rescuing. This is taking place. Central Fire loans us a space to practice in, and this is one of their practice buildings. We learn how to crib, which is moving, getting a survivor out from under a heavy load, in this case, a very heavy 4x8 wall, and get to play with fire extinguishers. What we do when there is not an emergency, we are out there doing outreach. We are out there doing things like Boulder Creek and Felton Halloween parades. CERTs are out there who are traffic trained to help keep all the kids safe. In disasters, one of our big ones has been shelter support over the years. The pictures on the left are the first few days down in Watsonville after CZU, just getting people in and directing them where they could go. It was also the middle of COVID, so temperature checks ended up being taken fairly quickly. And when those temperature checks were being taken, if somebody came out with a fever, we were sending them to a medical tent before they were checking in anywhere else. Donations were being brought in. Automatically that happened. And so we were helping organize all these things coming in until there was a way to deal with it all. We watched a whole city be built there over those 2 weeks. Disaster psychology, listening support. The man on the left is someone I met down at CZU after CZU in Watsonville. The man on the right was in January when we had some of the first big storms, and we set up a shelter at the Civic Center one weekend, which was all the people who were there were part of our unsheltered population who the police had evacuated from along the San Lorenzo River. After the fires, we've been working in resource recovery centers. After the storms this winter up in the mountains, they were set up a resource recovery center in Felton as well. Our goals as CERT trained people is, first of all, learning how to stay safe for ourselves and our family, making sure we have the supplies we need at home, in our car, at work, food, water, first aid, shelter, the things we'll all need. Helping others as immediate responders, and the mantra of CERT, doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. For people who are hooked up with Santa Cruz County, our website is santacruzcountyscert.org. For you on the other side of the mountains, it is, oops, I'm gonna get your face out of here so I can see you, scc-cert.org. You have a number of teams. For the gentleman from Fremont, I looked it up while we were taking a break here. CERT there is taught by the Fremont Fire Department, and they have nothing lined up at the moment. And I'm going to check these questions. Okay, disaster fairs. And we'll get to all that later. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it back on to our third speaker.
Thank you, Joyce. And we are going to invite Harry. Let's see. I have to remove the pin here so we can see Harry. There we go. Where is Harry? There he is.
Do I need to talk to make it show up on yours? Anyway, everybody
There we
can
go.
control that. So my name's Harry Guy, and I'm a volunteer with Resilient Los Altos. And I'm going to follow our website, but first, just a little bit about me and the organization. We started with CERTs, what we call our 3 core groups: community emergency response teams, our amateur radio operators or ham volunteers, and block action teams. And you already heard from Patricia and Fred talking a little bit about how the block action teams are the neighborhood block organizers, the ones that tend to be more socially oriented than me. I'm a better CERT, a better ham than I am a block action team leader. I try to do all 3, what I call triple threat, but I better at just executing CERT and ham responsibilities than being a block organizer. But I can get around and know my neighbors and check on them. So I have several on the list, one with medical issue that might get caught on the 2nd floor of their house, not be able to get out, and one who just turned 90 and got to check on her when things go south, like power goes out. I want to acknowledge, so we have Cookie Murata here, we have Fred and Patricia Evans here, and me. We're all part of the Resilient Los Altos leadership team. We have about 15 or so folks on our Resilient Los Altos leadership team. And now let me make it so you don't have to stare at me anymore and share the screen and show the website. And I'll go through just a little bit about the website. So let's see, I need to make that. Okay, is it visible? Can you see the website?
Yes, we can. It looks
Okay,
great.
so it's easy enough. It's resilientlosaltos.org. Easy to find. And this logo in the center that's our logo. We formed Resilient Los Altos a couple of years ago, and we're a fiscally sponsored program of the Community Foundation. Prior to that, we were joined at the hip 3 groups, the BATS, the CERTs, and the HAMs, that have worked together for about 10 years now. So it's about 2013, with the belief that neighbors helping neighbors is the right way to organize with different skills and help each other get through disasters and to help our city, but mostly focused on helping our neighbors and all of these stakeholders. So all of those little petals of the flower of Resilient Los Altos are what we consider our stakeholders. This is a little like, I like Marsha's reference to a COAD, and maybe what we're headed to is to implement a COAD. But you can see block action teams, city government, there's the CERT, allied health organizations, that's our nursing homes and other allied health. Larry's is the Los Altos Amateur Radio Emergency Service. That's our HAMs. And on around the circle. For fire service, we get our fire service by paying the Santa Clara County Fire Department. So they provide not only our fire service, but also do the CERT training. So we rely on them for CERT training. When we first started 10 years ago, we organized CERT training and did CERT training for 2 years before we finally got the city to pay the fire department like they should to teach the CERT classes. So now we can focus on other things, and we're trying to do that. And rely on Santa Clara County Fire for lots of public education, including our CERT training. Let me scroll down a little bit. Core groups. So our core groups are these three that kind of started this whole thing, and then we have all of our other stakeholders, constituents, and we're still working on getting all of the petals on the flower integrated together. I would say we've done the most so far, been the most successful with our schools, and I think we're making really good progress thanks to Tom Hill and Cookie and others with the faith-based community in Los Altos, and helping to connect that up with Resilient Los Altos. So we're making progress. Like most cities, during the pandemic, people, kind of physically and mentally shut down. And it didn't mean that we weren't going to have other risk of disaster and need to respond. But now we're trying to get back to in-person activities carefully. You can see some pictures of drills and stuff that we do. We try to do at least 4 drills a year. And we during the COVID shutdown kind of period, we developed 4 Zoom classes. So we have 4 basic 1-hour Zoom classes on being a bat leader. We have what is a damage assessment form in CERT lingo, but we call it a preliminary safety assessment form. Looks like a CERT form 1. And a 3rd class is on radio communications with FRS GMRS radios. And the 4th class is general preparedness. Because if we're not prepared and we're the folks that are supposed to help our neighbors, then we're not going to do very well. So making sure that we're prepared and we can talk about preparedness knowledgeably with our constituents, our residents, is important. We have, I guess, I think I can show this. I'll show one other thing. We have, no, I won't show it. Yeah, classes and training. So let's see if this works. Yeah, so anyone that wants to register on our site and attend one of our classes, this is just a list of the next scheduled Zoom classes. Each one is about an hour long. And those are the first 4 main Zoom core classes that we teach quarterly on Zoom. Last year and the year before, we taught them monthly and exhausted our trainers. So Cookie and Fred and Patricia, what did I leave out that's important? Nobody's saying anything. I got something on chat. Are those for me? No. Okay. Not for me.
One thing I guess you could say is also, Harry, is that we are beginning to get involved in more city events, providing communication support and safety support at parades and festivals and things like that. And that gives our bats, certs, and hams a chance also to practice their skills. It's kind of a different form of a drill. And so we've got the training going, and we have drills, and then we have events that that people can volunteer for.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, Patricia. Used to be that it was just the hams that would provide communication in those events, like pet parades coming up in May. July is usually the Arts and Wine Festival downtown, and then there's the Festival Lights Parade right after Thanksgiving. And the Hams have always supported those events for the city for communication, but now the city has requested certs to be available in case with first aid kits, in case something happens that there's some kind of mass casualty thing, not active shooter, because we run and hide with that. But if somebody, you know, an errant parade float went through the crowd and we had more victims, more patients than the emergency responders on scene could handle, then that's what the certs would come to action.
We're also trying to get more involved in public outreach. So for example, at the end of this month, the police department has its own open house, and we'll have a booth set up there with a lot of fun activities for kids and hopefully fun activities for adults as well. And we may do similar things at some of the upcoming festivals, have a table or a booth where we try to do outreach.
Yeah, a basic outreach issue for all of us is what's our percentage of residents that are signed up for Alert SDC? Oh my goodness, it's unbelievably low. Just that basic thing. Get an alert. Yeah. Okay, enough for me.
Thank you so much, Harry and Joyce and Lynn, for these stories. I feel like I have like 43 things that I want to start running out and doing here, because you know we all have an experience of disaster or emergency. I imagine most of us do in our lives, and just being able to be more prepared makes all the difference when it happens. So hopefully you are also inspired to think of how you or your community can get involved with these programs or something like them where you live. So to that end, we're going to go into breakout groups now. Susan's going to set them up with each one of the speakers. Marsha, Lynn, Joyce, and Harry. So if you have more questions for each one, you've got probably 20 minutes or so to go in and find out some more. So as she's setting those up, I'm going to
You get to pick one.
No, I mean, a question.
All right, so glad you guys had lively breakouts.
I want to know what the city has to do.
Hold on a second here.
What
And there we go. So glad you had lively breakouts, and we're going to wrap for the evening, just a couple minutes. Our next session will be May 3rd on food, housing, health, and tools, different areas of community mutual support or mutual aid. We didn't call it mutual aid because that has a specific meaning for first responders, but that's what it is at a community level. How are people supporting the community through feeding them during all kinds of situations, housing, providing health services, and tools. So I'll follow up with the slides in the video from this session, the Resilience Challenge Survey. I'm going to ask you to be looking at your local disaster programs and resources and ask for feedback on this session. Mary George sent me a note that they're having a Peninsula Community Disaster Preparedness Fair in Menlo Park on April 29th. And this is the sign up link. I thought that was kind of cool to be able to share that. And after this session, you could go to a live fair in a couple of weeks in Menlo Park. So thanks again for coming, and we'll see you May 3rd for the community mutual support session.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you,